Welcome to the Healthy Love and Money podcast. If you find money to be the number 1, 2, or even third largest source of stress in your relationship, then you're in the right place. Going beyond how to budget, invest, and do your taxes, we're going to explore financial intimacy. Discover how to talk with your partner about your shared financial life. Let's take the awkward and painful out of money conversations. Join me and hit follow to listen to weekly inspiring, healing, and motivating interviews with financial therapists, couples therapists, and financial planners, and so many more. Let's go on the journey of financial intimacy together. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Healthy Love and Money podcast. Today, it's my distinct honor to welcome Adam Kol to the show. He has a wonderful firm called the Couples Financial Coach, and he has this incredible new book coming out called Financial Intimacy for Couples. And well, listeners, if you've been listening to this podcast for any time now, there are very few people that actually use the word combination financial intimacy in their conversational flow. And so when I saw Adam was putting out a book on financial intimacy, I was like, Adam, we've been hanging for a long time. Congratulations on titling your book with financial intimacy in it. Let's do this. So with that long preamble of a welcome, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I don't keep notes, but I am sure our conversations were part of what influenced you to write a book with that title.
Yes. Well, we're both after this financial intimacy thing, probably both first in our own lives and with our significant others, and then also to help spread it throughout our communities of influence. Because, I think words have a profound, powerful impact on shaping expectation and experience.
Absolutely. And I mean, what I like about this phrase is it's theory. I mean, I think it could very well be like a polarizing thing to hear because people are like, financial intimacy, like that sounds ridiculous, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because would suggest that we could use a jolt to our paradigms in terms of how we think about this and have goals that are more than just figure out how to stop being really resentful or just fighting every time money stuff comes in.
Well, and I think, I guess even as we're talking about this, I'd never thought about financial intimacy being polarizing, but I think you're right. I think, when I look at the social media content that I consume, my whole social feed is full of fin influence, full of people that are trying to influence others around money. I'm a fin influencer, you're a fin influencer, right? But there's a subset of the group that is very advocating of kind of independence and separation in personal finance. You need to have your own money. It needs to be separate. It needs to be independent of what this other person is doing. And yet, that's, at least for me, maybe problematic for financial intimacy in the way that I conceptualize what that means. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about what does it mean to have financial intimacy and how is it different than some of the other models of the ways people in committed relationships might be going about organizing around money?
Yeah. My intention is that those ideas are not necessarily incompatible as far as like protecting your needs is a reasonable thing to do and can be done. And it's okay to protect your needs, even if you're aware that they come from traumatic experiences or that, you want to protect your money and your spouse or spouse to be has never done anything to make you think otherwise, that they would be like, irresponsible with it or that they would do something untoward and like kind of try and take the money and run. Even then, in my experience on social media, it's usually kind of approached just through one type of lens that's like, basically, yes, don't allow yourself to be vulnerable in your relationship around money. And if that's the only, like, if that's kind of the extent of the lens or like the premises that we're using, then I think we're really missing out, even on just the opportunity to talk with your partner about why it's so important for you to have a separate bank account or a retirement account or whatever, and to support them through whatever thoughts or feelings they might have.
So that really even could be an act of financial intimacy then, is having those hard conversations about why you feel compelled to keep money separate from your partner.
Especially when the alternative is just going along with having joint money. And but like because you're not expressing your fears or your wants or your needs, right? Like
Yeah.
that also can lead to disconnection and resentment that you haven't opened up about that stuff.
So it really is less about the way the accounts are managed or held. It's more about the meaning or purpose beneath why are we doing it this way? And does that feel the word I would use is mutually pleasurable?
Oh, I like that phrase. Yeah. There's something magical about the process that is like, if I'm coming from a place and I have my fears and anxieties and history, and so I'm like, I want to protect myself and have some or all separate finances from my significant other. It might occur that's the only way to do it is like gotta have separate finances. But if you're able to go and have a conversation, not only might you learn more about each other and yourselves, but you might realize there's actually many different ways you might organize your finances. And it also doesn't have to be that the way you do it today is the way you do it forever.
Listeners, I want to hear that piece. I want you to pick up on that piece. This is an ongoing conversation. It's not a set it, forget it. It's a trying to get to like, this is where
Right.
we're at. This is what we both need at this point to feel good. But maybe if we grow down the road, maybe we heal through more of our trauma or, you know, whatever, maybe we say, okay, let's do this differently now. Or if there's a betrayal of trust, it's, hey, we're all in. Now we need to separate a little bit because I don't feel so safe and secure.
And I think you're exactly right. And I've had clients who, you know, let's say even if they maybe aspired to have all joint accounts at some
Yeah.
point, but they weren't ready for whatever reasons. If you just hold on to that, now you're just not expressing yourself, presumably swallowing anxiety or fear or whatever could turn into all sorts of other difficult feelings. In this case, because we were able to talk about it, they came up with an idea of how to, and they ended up buying like a van together for
Yeah.
travel. That for them was a way that pushed their boundaries of
Mhm.
comfort without leaving them just feeling like, you know, just in a state that wasn't healthy for them. And then it's like, okay, we start there. If we want to combine more stuff later, we can. If we don't, that's also okay.
It's really about getting to mutual agreement about what we're doing and why we're doing it as much as possible.
I think that's a very good way to put it for
Yeah.
sure.
We kind of dived right in because I love this topic so much. But I'm curious,
I
when
appreciate
you were
that.
a 5-year-old little boy, did you imagine that this is what you would be doing? When people ask you when you grew up, hey, Adam, when you grow up, will you be a coach to couples around their money? Was that what your answer would have been?
As a 5-year-old, that I would have been involved in something money related, I think wouldn't have been a stretch because I was always fascinated by numbers and money and watching the stock tickers. The moment I could read, I was reading, the sports section and looking at all the box scores and the backs of the baseball cards. Like, I always loved
Yeah.
that stuff. But I mean, of course, in this particular context, when I was 5 years old, I don't
Yeah.
know if there was any like organized group of people talking about this sort of thing, then, of course, now we have the Finance Therapy Association
Right.
and lots of individuals and other organizations. I also think I always wanted to do something where I could help people and help them navigate challenging situations, challenging and complex situations. I'm grateful that I was able to find an area of significant need in society and where I'm able to help people do that. And I've been able to create a business out of it.
Love that. Identifying that need. So, what was the set of experiences, or at least a sample of some of the experiences that really got you into this space?
Yeah. I mean, well, I mentioned always loving, numbers, the stock marketing, business stuff was always fascinating to me. Think really for all my life, I've just kind of been a natural like mediator type. And I did ultimately get certified as a mediator. And that was something else that gave me the confidence to start this business when I originally
Yeah.
did. And I also did some work in financial services and like helping families with like different needs around insurance and stuff like that. And that was definitely eye opening to see that there was often a gap between what people knew and what they to know to feel empowered around their lives and their financial lives and mitigating risk in their lives. And so that planted a seed
Yeah.
too. And I've also been married and divorced myself. And while it wasn't related to money, because we were both
Mm.
just grad students living on our student loans at the time, there wasn't any money certainly to disagree over per se, but
Could it have been
nevertheless,
the absence of money that was the problem?
I mean, as I'm saying it, right, I'm thinking this,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
suffice to say that money wasn't a particular like stress or difficult topic for
yeah.
us that played a big role. I know the sting of divorce and the toll it takes. And when I came to realize that money is the number one stressor in relationships and often a top cause of divorce, then, it held some extra awesomeness for me to be able to possibly help people not have to end up going down that path.
Yeah. So really out of that, some of that personal pain of having a marriage have to unwind and what that felt like and knowing what it's like to be in conflict with someone that's difficult to get resolved. Plus you had that mediation experience and training. You living life's unfolding. You got this personal background of a loss of a marriage, training in mediation, working in some financial service context, and really seeing how hard it is to talk with couples about money and the different money decisions they've got to make. And now fast forward, you've got this new book out on financial intimacy. So I'm curious, when readers go and get a copy of this book, what are they going to get? What's going to be helpful for them?
I would say this is a book that tells you what to do so that you don't have to be told what to do. Like, I'm going to help you, like, okay, if you and your partner can do this, achieve that, get to this place in terms of your communication and your awareness of your finances, then you'll be able to choose freely for yourselves based on what matters to you, right? Rather than having to take someone's prescription on faith, because
Mhm.
there are so many different ways you could approach your financial life. Always really important for me that the goal is to help people feel empowered with the knowledge and caliber of communication they need to have so that they can do these things for themselves. It doesn't matter what I think. I have clients who have very different ways of spending their money than how I do, but that's neither here nor there as far as like my job is to help them be able to, might sound cheesy, but to live their best life, right? Which comes from that freedom and empowerment and ability to make their own choices as they see fit.
I think this is a really important message for couples to hear is, what I hear is a message of financial empowerment and an ability for couples to discern what's right for them. Because in the financial influencer marketplace, the people that, purport different ideas about what to do with money, some of them can be quite rigid and dogmatic about if you don't do it this way, you're basically doomed to failure or it's a bad way to do it. When I'm working with folks, they just feel this shame that they can't do it the way that this person is telling them they should do it. And so I think what I'm hearing from you is like in your book, you walk people through a way of learning to talk with each other about what they want and how to meet those needs, but also how to go to the marketplace and look at there's a lot of different ideas out there about what you could do with your money. What fits for the two of you? Because you use that great practical example is you're saying you want to spend your money going on, I'm making this up, lavish vacations, but I'm making this up. I actually want to spend my money not on lavish vacations, but on school for my kids. Like that's where I'm going to put more of the money, making those things.
Sure.
But not my job to say like lavish vacations are bad and school for my kid is good.
Yeah. Like, even if I do think I know better about a particular issue, it's like I would still want to be very careful that I'm drifting away and getting focused on like the client doing the right thing and what I think is the right thing in this moment, rather than what do they need to be able to evaluate thoughtfully and intentionally and mindfully, like you said, the variety of different paths that are in front of them, and go down whichever one they choose to for however long they choose to go. What I always try to do in my work, and the book is no different. It's not all just like touchy feely woo stuff. It's also like the numbers matter, right?
Uh-huh.
It actually does matter the interest rate on the different
Yeah.
debt you have. Credit card, it matters whether it's a mortgage, student loan debt, or credit card debt. It matters how much your expenses are and how much you have in your savings account, right? All these things matter as well. I come at it from like you almost can't have one without the other. The relational part of it, like having healthy love and money on the like human
Yeah.
side of it, if you don't have any plan with the numbers or any sense of that, you're not going to get the most out of your
Yeah.
money. You could have brilliant plan written by somebody who's got all the knowledge and experience and degrees. You and your significant other don't have that interpersonal piece of it, then the plan, the value can disappear very quickly.
Man, I mean, I see that all the time in my work. And I imagine you
I
do
don't
too,
doubt it.
right? Where there's overemphasis on either one side that kind of we'll call it the feeling relational side or on the planning side. And it sounds like a big part of what this book helps do is help couples to see there's a value in both sides of these and they work together, not in
Yes.
opposition
Yes.
to each other.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't know, Ed, you may have had a similar experience, but I have people who even they'll say it out loud sometimes, like, yeah, I just think my husband or my wife needs to hear it from someone else so they can understand what we need to do financially. I'm always kind of torn about like,
Yeah.
I am a business owner. And so, like you don't want to scare a person away by saying like, you're not going to get that thing that you think you want. But I also want to set their expectations of like, if anything, you got to figure out how to actually have that conversation with your spouse in a way that resonates. And like the answer that they don't listen to me, that's not a good enough answer. We got to move beyond that. And then usually I have had plenty of situations where there's one person, like I said, just I think my significant other needs to hear it from someone else who they respect or who has credential or expertise. And then perhaps unsurprisingly, a lot of times the other person feels left out of the financial stuff or overwhelmed by it or belittled by their partner because their partner can make it seem like there's only one right way to do this. And of course, all these things may be tied to our own histories and traumas related to money as well. So, that all shows up and that's is not get out of jail free or like, I'm going to make this really simple
Yeah.
and painless and easy on you. But the book is if you really lean into this and have these conversations, then you'll come out the other side with many more and stronger skills to help you navigate finances together in your relationship.
Yeah, I think Adam, that old, over worn out cliche is, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he fishes for a lifetime. And this is, if you're having trouble getting a partner to engage in a money conversation, yes, there's wisdom to bring in a third party to support you. But what I hear you describing, Adam, is how we're going to support you is not what you're. I'm not going to come in with my expertise and align with you and try to tell your spouse, that's what they should be doing.
Correct.
Right? That's
Correct.
not the game that you or I play with our couples. It's, "Okay, well, how can I help you?" And I'm just gonna make it up, "John, what do you think would help to get Susan to talk with you more about money? Susan, what would help you wanna talk with John more about money?" And get them starting to think about what they need to be responsible for and what they can do to bring pleasure to the conversation because it's not going to be an enjoyable conversation. They're not going to want to get into it. Just really
Yeah.
love fighting. And I mean, I guess there are some folks out there like that, but I don't know. I'm not that way. I don't enjoy being in conflict. I try to avoid it as much as possible, which is a whole nother.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Wonderful gift to be able to share with people is, you know, reminding them that things can look different ways and that they don't have to stay stuck in what feels like a rut that they're stuck
Yeah.
in, and helping them figure out what it might look like to get out of that rut and what's possible if you're not stuck in that rut, because a lot of times it's actually something greater than what you thought in the first place, when it was just you and your thoughts from a relatively narrow place. But when you widen that scope, all of a sudden there's different things possible, and you can get pleasantly surprised.
So, what you're saying, Adam, is if you're listening to this, someone shouldn't take your book, Financial Intimacy for Couples, and just give it to their partner and say, "Here, read this."
Probably not the best approach. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
But maybe
Yeah.
like, how would you, if someone's listening saying, "Yeah, I want to read the book and I'd like my partner to engage with me," how would you guide them towards making this a process that they can both benefit from?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's how the book is built. It's really built ideally to go through it as a couple and, read through a chapter at a time and share your thoughts and do the activities mentioned in the chapters. That's going to be the ideal way to work through
Yeah.
that. And, if you're stuck on how to even engage with your partner about that topic, maybe even just some inspiration from some of what we've been saying here, Ed, that's like, hey, this book is about, it's not like trying to tell us what to do. It's about helping us be able to have the knowledge and the conversations so that we can like actually come to a strong, solid consensus about what to do, and something that we're both bought into so that we feel like a team doing this stuff.
Is how many couples you work with feel like they're a team in their financial life together?
When they start or when they
When they start. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, listen, it's obviously a self-selected group
Yeah.
of people who come to work
Yeah.
with me. Yes, but yeah, very few of, usually at least one aspect or the other is missing for each person, whether it's like kind of numerical, practical, strategic side or the relational side. Usually for each person, at least one of those feels
Yeah.
lacking. And so they don't feel like what they would consider to be teammates.
So, yeah, and I think that's an interesting point is that couples bring different strengths and abilities. Couples want to work together, but they don't know how. They're stuck. They don't know how to be teammates when they each bring something different to the table. And so one partner is maybe more emotionally, relationally focused, and the other partner is a little more financially focused. And yet, what you find in working with those folks is that the person that's more emotionally, relationally focused maybe needs to develop a little bit more of the financial focus. And conversely, the
Yes.
person that's more money focused may need to develop a little bit more on the emotional, relational side of things.
I think broadly speaking, that's right. But, even within that, the one who's more focused in this example, like on the emotional and relational things, th- don't necessarily always realize how that's all functioning for them in the money arena. Right. So what I mean is client where the like one's coming to mind where one person is probably the more emotionally well versed person, let's call it, and they didn't really have clear for themselves that part of what they're struggling with, they don't actually feel appreciated or acknowledged for all the little things they're doing
Mhm.
to try and make the finances better. That's actually a pretty common experience, especially if a couple feels like they're in some sort of hole and they're trying to get out of it. and like one partner is the one who's maybe pushing more and they're feeling more anxious about it. And then the other person is actually trying, but don't ever feel like the other person sees their effort or acknowledges their effort.
Mhm.
It's just typically because the person is still feeling really anxious and overwhelmed by that. So it's hard to pause and acknowledge that your partner's trying. Appreciating that and encouraging them can be a big difference maker, especially while they're trying to build a new skill.
Well, I think about, so many of the clients that I've worked with in that vein, right, is where they may feel really self-conscious about what they're doing with money. If they're trying to do the right when they're trying to do the right thing and their partner's being critical or not recognizing the positive
Yeah.
effort, how
Mhm.
demotivating that is. A lot of times people have inherited pretty explicit messages that you're not any good with money or you're irresponsible with money or you're spoiled.
Yeah. Or just even generally messages that like you're stupid or you don't get it. And then it ends up also applied in the money context. And so then anytime their partner like has an idea or a thought, let alone a critique, it's so difficult to stomach. That also becomes something to work on both ends because it is important that you be able to share what is on your mind and what's not working for you or what you think might
Yeah.
be a helpful thing to do with your finances without the other person then getting so overwhelmed that the conversation shuts down. Right.
Yeah.
So there's really whichever of those kind of like roles or archetypes feel resonant for
Yeah.
you. I find that there's pretty much always work to do on both sides of this. All partners involved have their own piece of the pie.
I appreciate you naming that. That's because I do think that, sometimes we can come into this and, I've had clients thinking like, well, you just need to fix my partner. Nothing to see here. I've got no problems. I'm doing it all right. And it usually is not quite that exaggerated, but there's some flavor of that. And so it's really vulnerable work. This work is to look in the mirror and see, well, what am I contributing? What am I bringing to the table that may be causing this to not be working so well? And I think especially when it comes to money, if you're a air quote money expert, whether you work in finance in the finance industry or accounting industry or a financial planner, and you kind of feel like, well, I know how all this stuff works. Well, no, none of us know how it all works. And, like it's how we present the information to our partner who maybe hasn't gone on that same learning journey and hasn't acquired some of the same assumptions about how money works and what happens if you do this or don't do this. It can be very foundational things like compound interest. And maybe you've really internalized what it means, compound interest and the time value of money, two big money terms, but your partner's never studied those concepts. You get all anxious and nervous about, well, we gotta have more money going in so it has a long enough time to grow. They've never seen, the math on that. Like I remember I was working with a couple not too long ago, Adam, where he had done a lot of like reviewing and playing with compound interest calculators. And so he kind of had a sense for like, if I do this happens, if I do this, none of that for her. And so literally we just spent 30 minutes just plugging in different numbers with her and showing her like, here's what happens if you do $500 a month, if you do $1,000 a month, if you have 7% interest, if you have 10% interest. And she could start to see. And so she could start to see why her husband would get really anxious about them not saving more money. He was, like, well, the difference between this number and that number is $500,000 35 years from now or 25 years from now. Oh, well, that's a lot of money. Yes, it is a lot of money. Oh, $1 million difference if we do this or that. That's a
Right.
difference. And so that is that kind of side of financial awareness and understanding. I don't think, the money partner doesn't always recognize they're making these assumptive leaps and they think they're presenting it factually. I think this is the other disconnect I see, Adam, is they think they're presenting it logically and factually, but their partner's actually picking up on their anxiety and fear.
Yes. And oftentimes that anxiety and fear is messing with the other partner and their own then like emotional response to that anxiety and fear. It's like maybe they feel attacked or They feel like they need to go and like calm the other person down, and then they don't actually just like really give them supportive empathy, and they just try and go to try and fix things, you know, and then they get kind of stuck in those cycles. That's where if you just go to try and fix, you're missing out on the human part of
Yeah.
it. And then if you only deal with the human part of it, then like person who's, let's say, dealing with more anxiety, maybe it's going to be hard for them to quell that anxiety if you're in a not ideal financial situation and you just stay put, right? Like it is also important for them to see progress.
Right. Tax burdens being managed, or retirement
Yeah,
savings being contributed, or college funding is
absolutely.
happening, or taking a family vacation and spending money on something that's, experientially important, or on healthcare. My wife's a dentist, and sometimes she'll tell me, like, patients won't get care because their partner tells them, "Don't spend that money." And now my wife obviously has no idea what their income or net worth is, but, like, the partner's influencing their ability to get dental care that they need. And so, this is where that, again, that financial teamwork and collaboration and becoming aware of. I mean, I had no idea I had financial anxiety, Adam. I thought I was like just this great financial student and master of money because, I get the MBA and CFP, and ooh, look at me. Well, right below the surface, lots of financial anxiety. And beneath financial anxiety,
Mhm.
financial shame. And I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not capable around money. So this is why this work is so important.
Oh yeah. 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 And there's really, one thing I want to stress is just corollary of the idea that like, the person who comes and says, "Oh, you basically just need to fix my partner," or
Yeah.
get them to understand what I'm already saying, that how they'll discover that there's actually more going on and they may have a role that they've played and can do differently. It's also the other way for the partner who feels like the one who's it's all their fault or they're making the mistakes. Usually, the realities, there are going to be points of view, at least, where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you probably do good things. You talked about like financial
Yeah.
influencers and just social media influencers in general, right? Can fall into like these fixed ideas and narratives, like in the relationship world.
Mhm.
It's the implication, and I'm sure you have thoughts about
Yeah.
this, Ed, but it's like people now talk about attachment theory, and it's like awesome that there's a broader awareness of attachment styles, but there's this cultural narrative that the avoidant is bad,
Oh,
and then by virtue of that, the anxious is the good one who just wants love, and jerk avoidant is keeping them from it. Listen, as someone who's more apt to be the anxious than the avoidant, there are parts of me that are, well, I'm happy to just join in on the chorus. There's more going on there than all of that. But I think even in the financial realm, you see it with like whoever's the relative
yeah.
saver is the quote good
Right.
one. And I think that's no more true than that the anxious or avoidant one is the better one than the other because what you're spending, how much you're spending, what you're spending it on, these are very personal and contextual. And also, the person who spends more freely, they bring a lot of value to the person who's might otherwise be too anxious to enjoy as much of their money and life
Yeah.
as the other person helps them to, right? There really are both challenges, but also things that can come, as you were saying earlier, from all different kinds of people with different strengths and weaknesses, and also opportunities to, and this is when we say like financial intimacy, like for your wife to appreciate that anxiety and like see you that much more fully as a human being, that can actually be a powerful thing. I mean, the other day, my wife and I we stopped off to get a snack. And she says to me, "Oh, can you get a bottle of
Yeah.
water?" And for whatever reason, the mix of my financial anxiety and lessons I've learned, immediately I'm like, I'm supposed to go in there and spend $3 on a bottle of water, like when, like a 12 pack is $5 at the store. It wasn't a matter of affordability. And each of our snacks were going to cost at least twice as much as that
Sure.
water. So it wasn't really that. And then my wife is like picking up and she's like, wait, what's wrong with wanting one? And I'm like, no, it's not, it's me. It's not your thing.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own versions of that. And even if she just escalate with me
Yeah.
in that moment, that's helpful to know that I can get activated and like get a little bit irrational or wacky. And it doesn't mean the end of the world or it's going to be a big dust up. It's his thing. All right. I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah.
Of course, I went and forgot to buy her the water anyway, but that's the truth of it. Far from
Yeah.
life.
Well, I
So,
think you highlight something that's so important. The word interactive repair is what comes to mind is as we get more comfortable with our money stories and if our partners are able to meet us with empathy and we can take some self accountability too,
mhm.
moves us down the road. And so, Adam, as we wrap up this conversation, I'm curious, where can people find you? Where can people find the great book, Financial Intimacy for Couples?
The book is on Amazon, Kindle, and paperback. And so if you search financial intimacy for couples, it should pop up. And as far as finding me generally, I go by, as you mentioned, Ed, the couples financial coach. So my website is couplesfinancialcoach.com. That's my handle across social media. There's also a link on my website to the Amazon page where you can go and check out the book and purchase it if it feels like it'll be a positive contribution for you. If you want to contact me directly, you can, of course, do it through my site or email me at adam@couplesfinancialcoach.com.
Awesome. Adam, I'm so grateful for your time today and the work you're doing in the world. It inspires me to keep out there on the message of financial intimacy as well.
Thank you, Ed. Same to you.
I invite you now to stop for 5 or 10 minutes and reflect on what you just heard. Maybe even journal about it. Give yourself the time to consider what you just heard and what it means to you. By giving yourself the time to reflect and integrate what you just heard, it will help you along your journey of learning, healing, and growing towards financial intimacy in your life. Please like and follow this podcast and share with someone that would benefit from being on the journey of financial intimacy. Wishing you healthy love and money, Ed.